Welcome to another episode of Adapt the Canvas. Welcome to another episode of Adapt the Canvas. Technical problems, but we've got them sorted. Hope everyone's doing good. Tuesday afternoon. It's going to be our regular day for doing these live streams for Adapt the Canvas. And around 1:30, 2 o'clock, we'll get a bit better on the timekeeping. But let me know in the comments if it's 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. What do you think is the best time for these live streams? I'm going to keep experimenting. Next week, maybe you can start at 3 o'clock. Who knows? But today, we're going to be talking about something that I find very interesting and I've been working with a lot of my clients with. And it's this concept of momentum. And we'll get a little bit more into that. I'll let a few more people join in the room. But give me some feedback, guys. Let me know where you're calling in from, what the vibe is, how you thought our talk was last week. The feedback from our talk last week was really good. Particularly, there was a comment about art or content, and we can dive in again on that and get a little bit more of a conversation around that. But I found it interesting. I even found a website or a YouTube channel called Create Art Not Content. So check that out. And I saw a documentary or a little video yesterday about Prince and his work rate. Fascinating. Guy was a genius. Guy was an animal. So, what do you think about, is it art or is it content? And does it matter? Let me know what your thoughts are about that. I think it matters. I think it's a very interesting concept that plays with our minds. Language controls how we behave, how we react. So if we're calling something content and we're thinking about it as this thing that we continually creating that really feeds the algorithms and keeps us busy creating content, when do we actually get time to create art? When do we actually get time to create magic? When do we actually get time to create something that is lasts? My whole idea about creating art is this thing about creating something that has substance, that lasts, that gives you a legacy. Content by definition, in my idea anyway, is about something that you're creating, and it's just constantly creating. Art takes time to create. Art sits in museums and lasts for thousands of years. Art, we can view it and it tells us a story, and we are very, connected to it. Where look at what we're doing, we're creating content. It lasts for how long? People just create it, consume it, and move on to the next thing. It does it. What does it actually do? It helps us build numbers. It helps us create, you know, um, the awareness on these platforms. But what does it actually do for us as a creator? What does it actually do for us for our legacy? What does it actually do for us as a species telling stories? So there's a bigger, way deeper discussion to be had around um, what content is. So yeah, Benji, thanks man. Last week was wicked. Okay, regarding momentum, do you reckon it's a myth after the wheels have been turning for a while? So do you feel it needs to be constantly considered? Yeah, we'll get a bit more into that. And it's art, it's never content. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So we'll get into the whole momentum thing. It's a very interesting conversation. Why I'm talking about it is because it's a very powerful way to get people to the next level, and it's very misunderstood as well. So we'll dive a bit more into that. But let's finish on this conversation about art and content. The whole idea of how we've got to this place where it's art or our content is there wasn't content before there was art. It was always art. If you look at the history of art, you look at the meaning of art, look at what it's done, how it was perceived up until maybe the social media age. It was always about telling stories. It was always about bringing people together. Art was considered this thing that you did. It was part of your craft. You put the art into it, and it was part of your identity. And so that was very, very powerful back in the day, because if you think about how did different artists differentiate themselves, how did different crafts people differentiate themselves? You know, if you were a stonemason and you built a particular type of wall, you know how, you know, people could tell by the way that you chipped your blocks, the way that you put together your design, and it was very unique. You know, it's very specific. Same with people who made swords. It's about craftsmanship, right? That hasn't changed. There's still people out there creating stuff, using their hands, using that craft to tell the story. If you see, you know, I was fascinated by those Japanese knives, what the people use for, like chefs use these. They're really ridiculously sharp, but you can tell the craftsmanship of the way the handle is made, the way that the blades are cut, the way that the designs are on them, and they're all different. They're all unique, but the energy and the dedication and the focus, you know, that goes into it, you could tell it's miles apart from the obvious knife that you get from, you know, from the supermarket. The same thing with, just become really fascinated with ceramics as well. So I'm looking at the, you know, the detail that people go into, the techniques that people go into, the way that they use these ideas to tell their stories is very unique, right? It's very powerful. Again, it's about the person. It's about how they're telling their story. It's about how they get what it is that they do out to the world, right? Very unique. How do you differentiate yourself in a world where everyone's using the same platforms, everyone's using the same sounds, everyone looks the same, everyone talks the same, everyone's on these posts the same at the same time, they're told to post, they're told to make content. And why? Why do we do all of this? You know, we want to get more recognition. What do you want recognition for? If you're the same as everybody else, why do I need to pay you attention when I can pay somebody else attention? Well, because the system doesn't work, and it breaks down once you start to get into the nitty gritty of actually what it is that you want attention for. You're trying to build a brand. But if you're building a brand, surely your brand is about who you are, and then you're different from everybody else. So therefore, you should be branding yourself different from everybody else. You should be telling stories different from everybody else. Therefore, you must look different. Therefore, you must act different. So if we just break it down from that perspective, your art has to reflect who you are. So therefore, it can't just be about this constant conveyor belt of content that just by definition, the way that you create it and the way, and it needs to be as consistent to satisfy the algorithms. There's going to be a bit of a breakdown. There's going to be a little bit of a breakdown. So we have to go back to something more, you know, not original, but a bit more authentic. Something that really tells your own story, gets into your own, you know, so we can discover who you are, so we can figure out what story separates you from everybody else. Like, why do I need to listen to your story? Because you're unique, because you've got history, you've got passion, you've got curiosity, you've got wonder, you've got imagination. I want to hear your story. I don't want to see something that looks like somebody else, right? I want to feel like I'm invested in you. I want to feel like I'm invested, and we all do, right? What's interesting about people is like, we want to know. I want to know where you come from. I want to know why life is like where you are. I want to understand why you make the art you do. I want to know why your life stories, your experiences have put together this piece of art, whatever it is, music, clothing, whatever it is, it's got my attention. I want to know, right? I want to know. And so in that, there has to be more, you know, it has to be deeper. You know, let me know what you think. That's my thoughts on it anyway. I think that true art comes from a different place. And when we're thinking about not real art, when you're thinking about art that's really having an effect on you, a lot of that isn't on social. A lot of good stuff is on socials, but some of it doesn't get social because those people aren't concerned with it. Those people are thinking about For instance, when I made my last album, I was working with somebody, and I said to them, I want this album to sit in a museum, right? I want this album to sit in a museum. I want it to be available, you know, so when people go into these museums, they'll be there, and they'll be able to view it. That will be my legacy. That will be my thing that people go and see for for the next 100 years. But that was my thinking behind why I wanted to make the record I wanted to make. That was my thinking behind why I wanted to spend as much time as I did. And I spent 5 years making an album. That's the longest time I've ever taken to make an album. But I really wanted to tell a story. I hadn't made music for 7 years, and I really wanted to tell a specific story. And it took that long because I was exploring different techniques. I was trying to figure out how I can make my story sound different, how to feel different. There's so much music out there. Apparently now there's 100,000 pieces of content, 100,000 tracks being put on Spotify every day, right? And so times that by all different platforms, that's how much content is coming out every day. How are you going to differentiate yourself from everybody else? How are you going to make your sound different from everybody else? And so for me, it was about sitting down and creating my own universe. It was sitting down and creating this new world of sound that nobody else had heard before. Nobody else had heard the way I was going to combine this with that and make this intro like that, make this drop like that, make this outro that, make the length of the track like this. And it was totally a different experience. I pushed myself to go to a completely different level of production. I studied great people. I looked at great art. I traveled around. I read books. I meditated. I went for long walks. I really tried to understand what is the vision that I'm trying to get out of my head that people haven't heard, that people haven't seen, that people will want to sit down and listen to. That process took me 5 years. It might take you longer. It might take you shorter. But the point is, it took me a while to figure out what is unique about the story that I'm going to tell that's going to have an impact on culture. Why did it and why would it need to be in a museum, right? So all of these questions, it took time to figure out. It took time to meditate on it, time to build, this whole idea. And boom, when it came out, it was one of the best albums I'd ever done. It got reviewed and revered by totally a new set of people who weren't even maybe interested in the music before then. And so it crossed over, it got nominated for awards. But all those things just showed me that when you stop and you stop paying attention to, the social media or the distractions that are easily there to make us believe that you have to just do this and that's what's going to happen. Yeah, certain times for certain groups of people, I would definitely agree that social media and these platforms and the way that works, that system works, is beneficial, but it's not for everybody. I have a theory now that these platforms work for different levels in your career. And I think I mentioned this last week, but if you're just starting out, the reason you probably want to just focus on Bandcamp and something like Patreon is so that you can learn the business. Labels aren't the same as they were 10, 20 years ago, and that concept has changed. What a lot of people don't really get is that a lot of the industries, as they were, the music business, the film business, we are now in the creator economy. Like, this is the shift. The distribution channels have changed. The marketing channels have changed. The way people consume art, content, culture is changed. And so we have to understand as creators, how do we actually take what we're doing and use these new platforms to reach our audience? The system has the way that the system itself has changed, but the way people consume hasn't really. You've got creators, and then you've got people who love what creators do. that hasn't changed. What's changed is how we meet that need, how we meet that demand. And that's what's confusing everybody at the moment. We're going through this transition period of going from one technology, we're going from almost like, it's not the industrial age, but we're going from an age of social media, web point, 2.0, what everyone's calling it, to web 3, which is, from these platforms to serving your community, serving individuals, serving your fans, serving, you're going direct to your fans, right? You're doing direct to your community. That's a different way of thinking, right? That's a different proposition. It affords creators a different way of actually creating content or art, right? It's a different way of doing it. It's a different way of everybody getting what they need, but without these platforms in the way putting their, spin on it. Because when you really, really break it down, a lot of the time that we're spending on these platforms is for the benefit of the platform. And I know you guys probably heard this saying before, but I'll say it again. If the platform is free, we are the product, right? If the platform is free, we are the product. That means that, they're selling our attention. That's how they're getting these crazy valuations. They're selling our attention to these advertisers. So this isn't news to a lot of you. A lot of people know this. A lot of people are waking up to this. A lot of people are starting to shift to these new platforms. And maybe in the next couple of weeks, I'll do a show specifically on all of these platforms. I've got a podcast series coming very soon where I've been interviewing a lot of creators who have been talking about these new shifts, about what's happening next and how they're using all these platforms. So that series is almost done. We've got a couple more interviews to do. So do check that out when it comes out. So let's dive into today's topic, which is momentum, and why momentum is so important as a creator. So what stops people is the constant stopping and starting of building a project and getting it to move forward. Why is momentum so important? Because the energy that's built up when you start to make progress is one of the most valuable, powerful energies that you can use to start to make progress even further. Why is that? Well, think about it. If you're trying to push a rock up a hill, is it easier to push a rock up a hill? And then, when it gets on, it's difficult to get it on top of the hill. But once it's on top and you push it down the other side and there's a hill going down, do you need to carry on pushing it? No, the momentum of the speed keeps on going. And as long as there's a hill or it's got somewhere to roll to, it will carry on rolling indefinitely. The obstacles that get in the way slow it down, right? And that's like stopping and starting. Why do creators find it difficult to build up momentums? Because the second problem is that they find it hard to start. Right? Why do you find it hard to start? Because we're always looking for the right thing to do. Is this the right thing I should be doing? Is this the right platform that I should be releasing on? Is this the right software that I should be making my thing on? Is this the right audience? Is this none of those things matter. The only thing that matters in the beginning, why you should consider doing what you're doing, is because you feel the need to do it. That's the very first thing. Everything else is secondary. Most creators are paralyzed by these they're overwhelmed by asking so many questions before they even start. And I know this from experience because I've worked with over maybe 1,000 creatives over the last 15 years. And one of the biggest problems is this overthinking. Shall I do this? Shall I do that? Shall I do that? Before you've even started doing the creation, the thing that you were really passionate about. You're asking all these questions. You're asking all of these questions about things that don't matter at the moment. The only thing that matters is, what is your art? What is your craft? What are you going to spend the next 5 years consuming yourself in, right? Because that's all that matters. If you think about, if you want to get really good at something, you're going to have to put the time into it. And if the more time you put into it, the better you get into it. The better you get into it, the more creativity, imagination, wonder that comes out of you. And here's where one of the only times I will tell you to go into foveal vision. So foveal vision is what we call putting the blinkers on, what horses use, right? Foveal vision is focus, right? Peripheral vision is looking at everything all in your surroundings. Peripheral vision is good for solving problems. Foveal vision is good for paying attention, right? Paying attention is good for focusing on a task for long periods of time, right? Why do you need to do that? Because to get good at anything, it's going to require you to commit to something for long periods of time. It's going to require you to do more work than the people around you. It's going to require you to do more research. It's going to require you to do more digging. It's going to require you to be more diligent. It's going to require you to be more, inward focus for a period of time, so that you can find out what is the thing that really drives you forward. What's the thing that's really making you, want to stay in that space and do more than other people? Well, it's this thing that's driving you. That is your craft. That is your mission. That is your purpose, right? I'll tell you a quick story. When I saw this film Wild Style, I was 14, and before then I was a mod. I was a mod because I loved the two tones, the whole movement. I loved the specials. I loved all of that. But when I saw Wild Style, so Wild Style is a hip hop documentary about the hip hop kind of culture in America, New York, and in the Bronx. When I saw that film, it was like the light bulb went off. It was a complete culture shock. I saw these people breakdancing, rapping, graffiti, DJing. It was a complete culture shock. I'm a little kid in the West. The most that I'd ever seen was like the specials on TV. All of a sudden I'd seen this whole culture. Completely blew my mind. I knew exactly what I want to do for the rest of my life. It was like there was no doubt whatsoever about it. I dived into it, right? And I experimented with, I thought I was going to be a break dancer. I thought I was going to be a rapper. I thought I was going to be a spray painter. And then I found turntables. I found DJing. And that was the thing that consumed me. I wasn't passionate about it. I was enthusiastic. I was like, what's the word? I was completely, consumed by it. Obsessed by it. There was no passion there. It was obsession. It was like, I have to learn this, right? And that obsession, that led to me just consuming everything about that culture, everything about what was going on in that video, to the point it was it was like the Bible, my blueprint. Everything I did, I always referenced Wild Style. I always looked at Wild Style, like, how do they do it? And I used it as the building blocks to build the culture. And the momentum that I built from that was like, one step was go to the school, ask them if we could do breakdancing and DJing and scratching in the room. 2, took that whole idea to the youth club when I was started at 14 in school, 15 left school, took it to the youth club, Eagle House, did the same thing there. And then after that, did the same thing in these squats in Bristol called St. Luke's Road. So 16, 17, St. Luke's Road squats. 1920 warehouse at the bottom of the garden in the St. Luke's Road. 20, my brother makes a record, Wishing on a Star, gets signed, go top 10. We get, all of a sudden everything blows. But from 14 to 19, it was momentum. That's what kept us going. It was this constant one after another. Keep moving, keep finding the next thing to do, keep passionate, keep focused, keep being obsessed, keep trying, keep moving. That in itself, there was no guarantee that any of those things was going to work, but the momentum and the relentless pursuing of trying to do something over and over again really powered you through a lot of the things that people overthink. Did I know how to DJ? No. I watched this film over and over again till I figured out how to do one thing, and then I practiced it until I became really good at it. Did I know how to put on parties? No. I just went to the school, asked them, They said, yes, we did. So I just saw what was going on in the video. I did that. They put cardboard down on the floor. We put cardboard down on the floor. They spray painted their walls. We spray painted our walls. They got a microphone in the boombox. We got a microphone in the boombox. We got a hype guy. We got break. We just did exactly. We modeled exactly what we saw. We took the same idea to Eagle House Youth Club. Asked them if we could do a monthly party. Modeled exactly the same thing, right? Same thing, St. Luke's Road squats and the warehouse party. Modeled the same thing, right? We did it so much that it became ingrained in my unconscious mind that that's how you get shit done. That's how you do things. When you say you're going to do a party, you do the flyers, you go downtown, you flyer people, you give them out, you go and hire a generator, you go and put, tarpaulin on the wall, you go and get the hire the people. Like, there was a standard set things to do. I know it seems really kind of sort of prescribed at the moment, but this is how everything's done, right? Most people won't start until they know exactly how to do it. Well, you don't need to know exactly how to do it. You just need to start and then figure it out as you go along. Everything's like that. If you listen to any biography of some of the most successful people in the world, they didn't know how to do hardly any of the stuff they've done. They just know how to do one thing, right? Think about Steve Jobs making the Mac computer. Sure, there was a computer sort of craze coming up in America at that time where you buy those magazines and you buy a little computer. But to go from that to one of the biggest companies in the world that's ever been, like, how do you do that? There's no blueprint for that. So this trial and error. You're creating one idea, you're taking the idea to the next, you're taking the idea to the next. And in that, right, the problems get solved by creating momentum. So what most people think about is, well, I'm not going to start until this is right or till that is right. Well, no, you got to get going. And then those things that you thought were probably going to take, the things that you thought were important aren't actually that important. People make these great lists about things before we're going to create this business plan and we're going to do this, and this. Half the things don't even need to be done because you're not in the game. What do I mean? If you ever see a game and you're in the stands and you're looking down at the game, everyone thinks they know what it's like to play the game from in the stands, and they're all shouting down instructions when they're watching the players running around, and it looks like, oh, you should have passed it to him, or you should have given them the ball. But when you're actually in the game, you see different things, right? You're thinking different things. And if you're really good at playing the game, you're going off of instincts. You're not thinking. You're tuned in to the game at such a high level. You can see passes. You can see the way to pass someone the ball. You can see how to get a goal or shoot a basket or hit the ball with the racket in a way that is far beyond what it looks like when you're outside of the arena, right? When you're inside the game, when you're inside the arena, it's a whole nother thing. How do you get there? Momentum. Momentum builds up an energy. Momentum builds up this sort of consistency, right? It trains your mind to start seeing and thinking differently. That's why sometimes it's just good to just start to get into it, and that momentum will figure out a lot of the problems that most people think that they actually have. You don't have a problem. You just ain't in the game long enough to figure it out. You're not in the game long enough to let your imagination start taking over. You're not in the game long enough so your instincts can give you, a different way of seeing it. And so if you're constantly on the outside trying to figure out what to do, you're overthinking, because it's not that difficult, right? You're always thinking, what's the right thing to do? What's the right label to be on? What's the right software to get? What's the right thing to start? Who's the right people to talk to? What's the right thing? It's like, none of those things matter. Just get in the game, right? Get in the game and just start doing the thing that you love to do. And over time, you'll get so good at doing that thing. Marcus Lauber talks about it, the 10,000 hours. There's a great YouTube channel that I just discovered called Make Art Not Content, and they had this great segment on Prince and his work rate. Watch that. Watch people who are really good at what they do. There's hardly any thinking in there. It's mostly instinct, right? It's mostly imagination, and because you're in it for so long and you're doing it so well, you're doing it unconsciously. Energy's drawn towards you. Ideas are drawn towards you. The universe is supporting you because you're focused on this task, right? You're not thinking about posting, you're not thinking about getting success, you're not thinking about making money, you're not thinking about being famous, you're not thinking about the popularity that you're going to get from it. All you're thinking about is how can you make this thing the best thing that you've ever made, right? When you get into that mode, right, amazing things happen. That's called the flow state, right? We all know what the flow state's like, when time disappears, when momentum and all energy is natural, when everything seems to come together. You know, I've been there many times, and for me it always happens like I'll be working on a track, and then towards the end of the track it's almost like I'm not even there, and then I'll come back and the track's finished, right? And I'm like, what's happened there? You know, I don't remember how I've done the back end of the track, but it's done. It's like something else comes over. Something else comes over me. And most people, if you're performing, you know this as well. When you're DJing or performing in front of a crowd of people and you get so into it, you know, for me, the first 4 records, you know, I'm very aware of. And then afterwards, the next night, you know, if it's an hour set, it's, you know, it's gone really quickly because I'm in it. I'm in the flow. I'm so engrossed in what I'm doing. I can look up and I can see, you know, what's the next tune. It's like I know exactly what the next tune is. I should play this one. You know, I want to take people on this journey. I want them to feel this. I want them to move like that. And it's the same thing with, you know, getting into that flow state, building that momentum. Is like it takes on a life of its own because your intention is to do what? Is to create pieces of art that's going to take people out of their normal way of thinking to another space, right? That's the real, for me, that's the real job, the mission of art, is to tell a story that transports people out of their normal everyday environment into something new, into a new place. To me, that's the job of art. And to do that, you have to be the first person to go on that journey. You have to be the first person to go on that ride, because how are you going to tell the story if you're not going on that ride, if you're not on that journey? So when you work this system, when you work momentum, when you work into the flow state, you automatically switch off from the normal world. The chatter disappears, the distractions disappear. You are in slipstream, you are in flow state, you are in intuition. And that's where you start to create these stories and this magic starts to happen. You start to connect into this other thing. And that's why you say, yeah, my man's in his own world. My girl, she's in her own lane, right? Yeah, where is that? Right? And we can get a glimpse of this. Have you ever been, you know, on a journey when you're a passenger, maybe even the driver? I've done this a few times as well, but you're just going somewhere and all of a sudden you're just in this dream state, right? And you're not even aware of your surroundings. And all of a sudden you can hear someone's calling your name, right? Someone's like calling you. All of a sudden they get your attention and you come out of the zone, right? And they go, oh, where have you were miles away, right? Yeah, I was in the zone. Where's the zone? It's miles away, because you're like focused on this thing. You know, you're playing this scene, you're playing this movie, you're in this world, and you're all consumed, right? Your whole body experience, everything about you is consumed by this energy, consumed by this thing, this momentum, this experience that's completely separate from this normal waking world. And so the practice is, how do we make this part of our daily routines, right? We'll get into a little bit of that in a sec. But so momentum, very, very powerful. What stops it? Overthinking. This overthinking that you need to do more to get ready, right? You don't need to be great to get going, but you need to get going so you can become great, you know? Most people, why are they overthinking? Because they know what they're about to do is going to become challenging. And so to some people, the challenge is a barrier for them to start and for a barrier for them to get to that next level. But the challenge, what's the challenge for? The challenge there is to make you grow. Well, what do you mean? Well, think about it. If everything was easy, if you knew how to do anything, what would be the purpose of being here, right? Most people don't want to struggle, but the struggle is an indication that you're heading in the right direction. If you think about it, if you think about it, if you didn't struggle, right? If there was no opposition, if there was no obstacles, how would you know you're getting better? Right? If there's no struggle, if there's no opposition, if there's no obstacles, how do you know you're making progress? But what do you use as a gauge to know that you've actually overcome something? You've done the challenge, you've learned something from the challenge. When the challenge comes round again, you look at it from a different point of view. Right? Think about that. Think about, I always say the goal, you don't get you have a goal so that you can become the person who can get the goal, not the goal. How many times have you actually got the goal and it wasn't what you wanted? You will tell the story of the challenge. Hey man, what have you been up to? Oh man, I've been working on this project. Oh, how's it going? It's going all right, And then what do? We launch into the story of all the challenges we've overcome. I've got a friend who's building a house. Oh, how's the house? He doesn't tell me how the house is. He tells me about all the problems that he's had to come up to overcome. Right? He's had to solve all these problems so that the house can keep moving on. He hasn't once told me that like he's looking forward to moving into the house, or like it's all about the problems that they're solving to finish the house. Right? And that's what we're like. We always talk about the challenges that we've gone through to get X. Even when people go on holiday, what do they tell? What's the first thing someone tells you about their holiday? Oh yeah, the holiday was great, but we got 7-hour delay at the airport. And then when we got to the next place, we missed our flight. And then when we got to the next place, when we got to the hotel, our rooms weren't ready. And then and then after about 15 minutes, but what was the actual holiday like? Oh, it was fantastic. I had a great time. But then when we were coming back, right, they got all these stories about the holiday that were about how they got there. It was always about the journey. And that's what we're about. We're always about the journey. What is the journey like, right? What's the journey like for you? Yeah. It's like, what is it that we're really here to do? We're really here to learn, right? We love the destination. Of course, I love going to Bermuda and sitting on the beach, right? That's great. I love the thinking time. The traveling is interesting. The traveling coming back is interesting. But the destination, like a holiday destination, is brilliant, right? The whole idea about getting to the goal is not that interesting now, right? I can sit on the beach. The last holiday I went on, after 10 days I was done. I was like, I'm good. I know why I came here. I'm done. I want to go back to work now, right? Because for me, that was my downtime. That was my period for rest. And now it's like, right, I'm juiced up. I'm amped up. I'm ready to get back to creating I'm gonna say content now. I'm ready to get back to making art, to get back to doing something that I love to do, right? And so that was like a time for renewal, time for rest, right? Very purposeful, very, nourishing. But it's not the destination, right? What I want is to continue to learn. What I want is to continue to grow. What I want is to continue to push forward, right? So think about this. This is an exercise for yourself. After this call, maybe even write something down now. What is it that you are trying to achieve? What is it that you're moving towards? What are the obstacles that you're trying to avoid? What is the game that you're trying to avoid playing? Right? Where on the stands are you shouting at the team down there at? Or are you on the pitch, in the game, playing to your highest level? What is your focus, your goal, your vision? What is it that you want to have put in the museum? Where are the obstacles stopping you? Where is the things blocking you? Where is the challenges that are coming up that's stopping you from doing what it is that you truly love to do, right? So the challenge, like I said, is there to help you get better at being able to slow down or even quiet down the chatter, the self-talk, the mind chatter, to get you more into momentum, because the momentum is packed, filled with intuition, imagination, instinct, right? When you can do the three I's and you can really get into that space, you're good. You can create magic from that perspective, right? And that's a good place to be as a creative. So you need the challenges, because the challenges help you get into that. They help you solve problems. They help you get into your nervous system that you can do it. You can solve problems. You are capable. You have the ability to be able to do that. But if you don't get into the game, you won't learn the skills. And if you don't learn the skills, you'll continue to be a bystander on the outside, always looking, wondering, thinking that, you know, there's something special going on there. It's not. There's nothing special going on in the game. It's just that people are playing the game, right? And so why don't people like to deal with the challenge? Because of fear of the unknown. What's the fear of the unknown? The fear of the unknown isn't the fear of the unknown, because we've always dealt with the fear. We've always been in the unknown because we've done this millions of times. Think about all the new situations that you've been in where you haven't known what's going to happen. It's not the fear of the unknown what bothers us, it's the fear of not knowing what's going to happen that bothers us when you think about it. So it's the uncertainty. Right? We go into these places, it's the I don't know what's going to happen. I'm uncertain that I'm going to get the outcome that I want. So I'd rather not go into the situation. I'd rather just stay on the outside, because at least I know I'm safe. Right? The problem with being safe is there's no growth in safe. There's no experimentation in safe. And in growth and experimentation, that's where we create what we actually can call safety, because the only safety really in this experience that we have is to understand how to keep maneuvering, is to understand how to keep changing, how to understand how to keep moving forward, how to be resilient, how to be resourceful, how to notice what your resources are, how to notice how to be resilient, how to communicate, how to use imagination, how to use it. But that happens while you're in the game. It's like you have to keep moving forward to really get the benefit of that. It's very difficult to create that type of awareness, knowledge, information, experience by being stagnant, by standing still, by being a bystander. It doesn't really happen. You have to be in the game of life, and you have to play it to its full extent on all levels, so that you can really understand and get the learning in the nervous system. So when uncertainty is good, you need a bit of uncertainty, because if you knew exactly what's going to happen every single time, what would happen? It would be boring, right? There'd be no fun. It'd be like, oh, I know exactly what's going to happen. That's going to happen. That's going to happen. That's going to happen. That's going to happen. And sure, it'd feel good for a little bit of time, but after a long period of time, it would just feel boring. You'd be not stimulated. You would have no motivation to keep doing the same, to keep doing anything, because you know exactly how it turns out. So what you want is to step back, and you want to try new things, right? You want to try new techniques. You want to be in different classes. You want to read different books. You want to watch different documentaries, different films, go to different cities, different towns, hang out with different people. Why? So you can expand your palette, expand your awareness, expand your consciousness, learn new things, be around different people. If you're a producer, DJ, go and hang around with painters and understand their way of thinking and how that they use color. How do they use brushstrokes? How do they use canvases, right? And then figure out, how can I use that in my DJing or in my production? If you're a dancer, go and study, ocean, deep sea diving. How does that help you with your dancing, and vice versa? So it's like the whole idea is like studying great people, studying creative people, studying people who think differently. Why do they do what they do? Ask them probing questions. Then think about, how can you apply what you're learning to what it is that you're doing? Why? Well, let's get back to the very first thing that we talked about. Is it art or content, right? If it's art and you're an artist, then you need to be around people, doesn't matter what level, what art they do, as long as it's high level art. The high level art is high intuition, high imagination, high instinct. We can all learn stuff from that, right? You take some of those ideas, you bring them back, and you apply them to your creativity. You apply them to your way of thinking. You apply them to your thinking. One of the best business concepts is to study other businesses outside of your industry to see, how they are doing business. Business in itself is very simple. You got a product, and then you got a price point, and you got customers, right? You got a way to find the everyone's trying to figure out how to get their product with the right price point to their customers. Doesn't matter what business you're in, everyone's trying to do the same thing, but they do it all in different creative ways. And so you see someone who's really good at that, study them, read their books, ask them questions, go and get mentored and coached by people that have got experience at doing these things on scale. It'll blow your mind at what you can learn and what you can bring back and apply to your industry, your skill set, right? Your belief system. We'll do a session another time where we go deeper into the belief system. So again, what is your biggest challenge, right? Break it down, right? Break down what your biggest challenge is. What is the thing that's keeping you stuck? And then notice how you describe it. One of the things that I talk a lot to my students about, people I'm working with, my clients, is notice the language that you're using to describe your experience, right? That will be massive. When you figure out what it is that you're saying on a daily basis. Most people goes totally unconscious. Something happens, they got this self-talk, and that's telling them exactly what it is that's actually going on in their environment. They just keep repeating it. And what does that actually do? Well, if you are what you eat, then you are what you think, and you definitely are what you say. So if you're constantly saying something continually over and over again, you're going to create a pattern and a habit and a belief system that supports it. So first thing to do is notice your pattern, right? You break down what's going on. Notice your pattern, notice your language, right? Notice why you're resisting the momentum. Notice why you're overthinking, what it is that you're resisting to do to get to that next level, to get into momentum. Notice what you consider a challenge to be. Right? What do you consider a challenge to be? Something hard, something struggle, something that my family's never overcome, something that people told me that I'll never overcome, something that school, said I was never going to be good at, something that somebody pointed out to me that, right, you can trace back these patterns, these habits to a certain point in time. You start pinpointing it was like this thing that somebody said. And because we're at such a young age, and I'm just going to really skip over this bit because it's quite in depth though, but because you're at such a young age, you're quite impressionable, you accept this belief, that somebody had, and it's generally from an authority figure. Parents, school teacher, police, doctors, anybody who's got an authority over you while you're a young person, you tend to believe them. And so when that's in place, those beliefs tend to stay for long periods of time. And so that creates this uncertainty about the future. How am I going to do X? I don't know how to do X. I don't know anybody who's doing X. Everybody in my environment, this is why I spoke about speaking to people outside your industry, right? Different environment. Creativity is the same. Thinking is the same. We all got one brain, one mind. We all use it the same way. We all use it. We all have access to, but we all use it different ways, And so mixing around other people to see how they're using their creativity, see they're using their mind, gives you some ideas about how you can be using yours differently. Could potentially shatter your beliefs. And this is a potential reason why most people don't want to do the work, because their identity is so ingrained in a belief and a pattern and these habits and this way of being that the minute an opposing thought comes into their reality that's so strong, that's so dominant, that opposes their worldview, they immediately push it away because that's a threat to their safety. That's a threat to who they are. And they don't want that. They're not necessarily comfortable with the way that they are because they might not be living the life that they want, but it is comfortable to stay in your bubble because you know it. You've known it all your life. Everybody around you knows it. You know, your family live like that. Your people you hang around live like that. Everybody you work with lives like that. Yes, it's the foundation. It's the fundamental uh, precepts of your identity, and these precepts of your identity are the foundations of who and what you are. It's how you speak. It's who you hang around with. It's how much money you make. It's the people you have a relationship with. It's the job you get. It's the way you go to work. It's the car you drive, the bus you take, the clothes you buy. All wrapped up in this deep layer of identity that most of us, unless you're trained in this way of thinking, we take for granted. We never question it until when our buttons are pushed, and then if you're trained, you can spot it. But if you're not, you just get your buttons pushed and you believe this thing, when in fact it's not actually you. It's your identity. Your identity is something you've taken on board, right? It's not actually you. What you actually are is something far greater, far richer, far deeper, something far more aware, right? We've just taken on this identity because it suits a purpose. It helps us fit in, right? And that's what it's there to do. It helps you fit in because as a species, we need to be associated with groups like pack animals, right? And the minute we break away from this pack animal mentality, we we feel threatened. We feel ousted by the community. No one wants to be ousted by the community. So it's better to believe what everybody else believes, because then you've got more chances of survival, right? And so most people don't challenge the dominant belief in the environment because they know that they're going to be pushed out, right? And our survival mechanisms start to kick in, and we start to go, oh my God, right? Exactly. That's why you're a product of your environment. Exactly, right? So we know that there's lots of people who are products of the environment, and then we have a few outliers who grow in that environment, and then they realize, they wake up, they come to their senses, and they say, you know what, this isn't for me, and then they find a way to get out of that environment. And we see these people, you see them come back after 10, 15 years. Maybe they've gone to live in New York, or maybe if they're in New York, they come to live in London or Japan. If they're in Japan, they go to San Francisco, whatever, and they realize that there's a different way of living. And if you've never moved from your environment, you see them come back, and they're the same person, but they've changed. They look slightly different. They might dress, but that's not what makes them change. You can see it in their eyes. You can see it in their aura. You can see it in their spirit. There's something different about them. And if that's you, you know, once you've moved out of your area and you live somewhere else for 10, 15, 20 years, you go back to your area. You know, I drove through the area where I grew up about 3, 4 weeks ago, and all the houses looked so small. The streets looked really narrow, and it was like, wow, I don't remember it looking this small. And it almost looked like this matchbox kind of environment. It was crazy, but that's where I grew up. It was huge, you know. But I've been all around the world. I've seen lots of different cultures, lots of different things. My mind has been expanded. I'm open to lots of different things, lots of different experiences. And I've been exposed to different cultures, different environments. And so I've got just a different worldview than most people. And so that's what, you know, we want to learn. We want to put ourselves in these environments where we can expose ourselves to lots of different ideas, lots of different challenges, lots of different ways of thinking. Because what is your biggest challenge? You know, what is the thing that you really want to get to? Why, you know, you're not in momentum, or maybe you are in momentum, but you don't know what to do next. So this is what we're doing, like breaking it down. Whatever stage you're at, this exercise is going to help you get clarity, because where you can see clearly, you can see what the next steps are. And remember, we're not seeing with the physical eyes, we're seeing with the third eye. The third eye is the eye that's connecting us to our imagination, right? And if I cannot imagine where I'm going to be next, I will not take the action to go there. So why do we want clarity? Is because so that we can start using our intuition, our imagination, our instinct. These are the guides that really get us to the next step. These are the guides that help us imagine a better scenario, imagine a better environment. Apparently, human beings are the only creatures on this planet that can imagine a better next environment. Right, the next place is I imagine it to be better, right, and then we work towards it. So let's break down what is the biggest challenge. When you break down what is the biggest challenge, you'll figure out there's a stressor there, right? The stress is what shuts down the creativity. So when I know what I want to do and I know I can break down the challenge, then I'm recognizing that there's a stressor there. There's a language pattern where I'm going to be mindful of how I describe it. I'm going to write this down. That would be one of the best things to do. Journaling's great for this as well. So you're going to write down, what's my biggest challenge? Write down what you think it is, and then break down the language. How am I describing this? What are the words that I keep using? What are the words that everybody else keeps using? Ask people around you. How am I talking about this business that I'm trying to start? How am I talking about the business that I'm already in? Am I always complaining? Am I worried? Am I happy? Am I excited? Do I have great plans? Or am I always watching out for danger? Am I always, talking about what's gone wrong? Am I always talking about the potential dangers? Or am I complaining about my competitors? Am I complaining about the competition? Or am I, totally optimistic? Am I happy? Am I filled with joy? Am I always, looking forward to the next obstacle, the next challenge, the next mile marker that I'm heading towards? Like, write down exactly what it is you're using to describe what's going on, and then if you can, ask the people around you to feedback on how you're talking about what it is that you're trying to achieve, right? The stress, like I said, stops creativity, stops your imagination, stops your instincts, stops your intuition, and you go. And so this is the time when you ask this question, you go from peripheral vision, which is creativity, you go zoom, right? Problem state, stress, and this is the other side of foveal vision, where you don't want to be focused on one thing, because in trying to solve problems, you get to creativity. You want to be peripheral vision. You want to be in this space where everything is still open. But if you're in this foveal vision, you can only see one thing that's in front of you, and that's majority of the time is the problem, and you don't want to be in that state. So notice, like we said, what are you saying? Notice, write down what you're saying. Over, like, what is the dialogue? This is about awareness, right? And this is about empathy as well. This is like, having that kindness to yourself, because we only do what we've been taught. If you don't know what you don't know, you don't know it, right? I know it's a bit of a weird one, but that's just what we are. We are in these environments. We are young children copying the environment. We're just recreating the environment, doing the best that we can in the environment. So if that's the best that you can do in the environment, then that's the best you can do. You can't do any more than that. But what you can do, you can start taking some accountability and responsibility, right? Reconnecting with your ability to respond, right? So information comes in, how do you respond to that, right? Reconnect with that. You are the one that's going to choose how you're going to react to this stimulus, this information. More on that in another session. And so then when you recognize that how you're reacting, and the reason why you're not making momentum is because you're not taking action. So no action equals no results, right? No action, no results, no momentum. So you can see how this loops around. And the more you loop around, the more you go down spiral, right? That's your downward spiral. You're always going around. You're always making progress, right? But the progress might not be the progress you want. You're always moving, but it might not be in the direction that you want. You're always doing something, but it might not be the things that you actually want to create the results that you actually want, right? So, boom. That's our hour of Adapt the Canvas. And we've gone in deep on momentum and on art and on content. And we could easily go in for another hour, but I'm going to save it for next week. We're going to be back next week. I'm going to dive in again, and we're going to pick a subject, and we're going to focus in on this creators conversation. I hope this was useful and helpful. Leave some comments. Leave something in the comments about what you thought about today's session. Um, was it useful? Are you going through a situation similar to that? Do you know other people who are going through it? Can you recognize this for yourself? Um, and do you want to take this to the next level? So I'm going to be doing a workshop where we're going to be going a lot deeper next week. I believe I'll give you the dates, and we're going to be go a lot deeper. It's going to be a 2-hour session, and we're going to be. Thank you guys, appreciate all that good feedback. We're going to be going deeper into this in a more of a Zoom setting as well. So it's a free workshop. We're going to be diving in. I'm going to be helping and guiding you creators to get to whatever next steps that you are looking for, and you're going to come out of that with an action plan for the next 3 months. It's going to be very, very powerful. Like I said, I hope this session was really useful to you. We'll be back next week for Adapt the Canvas Creator Conversations, where we'll be diving in to more of these subject matters, more creative content, more creator art. And if you guys need support, we're going to be doing, like I said, a workshop. There's also other ways I can support you. So leave a comment. Let me know how you want to proceed. I can send you some information. You can jump on a call. We can figure out how we can work together. And I look forward to meeting some of you very soon. So listen, take care. See you next Tuesday, 1:30. Create a conversation. Leave some notes in the comments about how you thought this session went, and what else you want to discuss. We will get to those in the next couple of weeks. Until then, have a great week, and I'll speak to you soon. Why is momentum so powerful? New line, new line. The challenges that we face